It was on the 2nd of April 1982 that Argentina invaded these islands. To the people who live here, these are the Falklands. But to the men who came ashore on a beach just over there, and to Argentina today, these are the Malvinas. Now, 2.5 months later, on the 14th of June 1982, across the water there in Stanley, the commander of the Argentine forces surrendered to the British. And while a whole generation may have passed since this conflict claimed the lives of almost 1,000 men, the tension between the UK and Argentina on this issue remains, and perhaps we shouldn't be surprised. A cursory look at the history books tells us people have been arguing over this part of the South Atlantic for many centuries. So World Have You Say has come here, and also to Argentina, to try and understand how people feel about the war, about these islands, and also about each other.
I'm in Plaza San Martin in the center of Buenos Aires, a rather wet and cloudy Buenos Aires. It's rush hour, people coming and going in cars and on foot. But this ceremony that you can see behind me, they do this every day without fail. And they do it in honor of the young men, the young Argentinian men who died in Las Malvinas, or the Falklands as it's known in Britain. And unlike the Falklands, where there are battlegrounds that people can visit, there are graves that people can visit, it's where the action took place. This memorial, this plinth with these names on, is the only memorial in Argentina to the young men who died in that war. So these are the names of the 655 young Argentinian men who died in the war in Las Malvinas, or the Falklands. Chao, Julio, Ruben, Maciel, Enrique, Alejandro, Rios, Hector, Ruben, Villa, Jose, Orlando. Their families come here throughout the year to pay their respects, presumably on birthdays and other significant dates, and leave flowers sometimes as well. And 30 years on, as the battle still rages over who these islands belong to, it's a very sobering thing to stand in front of the names of all of the young men who lost their lives in that war.
Over 600 Argentine servicemen died during the conflict, and 230 of them are buried here in this cemetery in what feels like the middle of a wilderness. And the reason that these men rest here is that at the end of the war, the British offered to repatriate their bodies, but the Argentine government said, no, the Malvinas is part of Argentina and they can be buried here. And so they were. And we can debate whether that was the correct decision or not, but some argue that this is yet another example of how pride and stubbornness on both sides has got in the way of this centuries-old conflict being resolved. For many years after the war, Argentines weren't allowed to visit, but that changed with the deal in 1999, and now it's quite normal for there to be Argentine visitors on the islands. We met a group of veterans as they returned to where they'd fought at Goose Green, and I was curious to know from them if they felt Argentina had benefited in any way from the war.
I see nothing good from the war in 1982. All I saw was death and sadness. In my opinion, some of what we have here enables us to carry on with our lives from a war that gave us nothing positive. The governments need to talk now.
I'm in Plaza de Mayo, which is the financial, historical and political heart of Buenos Aires. The presidential palace is behind me, the Casa Rosada, which is where Eva Perón gave her speeches in front of those huge crowds. There are banks all around me, the stock market is just to my right. There's representations of the grandmothers, las abuelas, who danced alone. You might remember those scenes with the ghosts almost of their missing male relatives under the military junta in the 70s and very early 80s. Just in front of me as well is an encampment that's been here for some time now of men who insist that they are veterans of the Falklands War, although their government disagrees. And when it comes to Las Malvinas, or the Falklands, depending on what you call it, have there been any benefits from it for Argentina?
The only benefit is that it was the last straw and it helped us get rid of the dictatorship. But I think sooner or later we will have gotten them out, because economy was very bad and we would have conquered democracy even without a war. So I think it's sad that we had a war.
I think they are Argentine, of course, no, because I live here. I think they are ours.
We are not enemies. We want to live with them. We want to. They start to be part of our Argentinians' life.
Not far at all from Goose Green is Darwin. It's a cluster of houses in a spectacular setting, and it's owned by a couple called Ken and Bonnie. And they, like all the islanders that we met, have next to no trust in Argentines.
The Argentines are the enemy, and you expect the enemy to do you damage. But you don't expect your friends to do you damage. And when they do, it feels like a real and very profound betrayal.
They're still the enemy, are they?
Well, because they covet our home, and they continue to covet our home. As long as that happens, they're going to be the enemy. If they would give up, if they would relinquish their claim to the islands, then I think we could all get on rather better than we do.
Do you think that David Cameron ought to be doing a better job of putting the Falklanders case?
Well, it would be nice if he did. I'm very aware that diplomacy is best carried on in secret, and I have no doubt that there are quite serious diplomatic efforts going on. But certainly from the point of view of people living here who keep on hearing about more measures being taken against the Falkland Islands, it would be nice to have something, a response from Britain that were more public.
And this level of hostility is not one way.
It's so humiliating to Argentina, what Great Britain had been doing to our country since 1833 when they invade Malvinas by force, that we are going to take any action that is possible pacifically to force Great Britain to sit with Argentina in the United Nations.
Even if it limits the trade you can do?
Even if it limits the trade, because trade can be substituted with other countries' trade.
Do you sometimes wish that you could export your lamb and your wool to Argentina?
Argentina's economy is all over the shop. You'd be struggling to get any kind of continuity dealing with the Argentines, in my experience. If there wasn't a sovereignty claim and they didn't keep banging their drum all the time, it's entirely possible that relations could be better. But that aside, they'd still have to pay the right price for our product.
Clearly no agreement there then. It appears that while the issue is the most important to islanders, while Argentines care, the Malvinas must take their place among a list of concerns from the economy to football.
I don't think that Falklands are so important here. I think it's just a political thing. I don't think that people here are so interested in that. Football is everything for Argentinian people.
In my opinion, compared to the Falkland stuff or Malvinas stuff, football goes first. As a Spurs fan, I can tell you, go Spurs.
I think it's the healthiest way to deal with this, because honestly we don't have anything to say about English people, because we don't have any problem. You know, war is between states and governments and things. I think it's very healthy and it's very fun. And I tell you a secret, whenever we play in the World Cup, for us there is no World Cup, we don't play against Brazil or England.
I've been talking with islanders all day long, and there are two things which most people readily share. The first is how long they and their families have lived here. People say things like, I'm sixth generation. And the second is their animosity towards Argentines, or Argies, as almost everyone refers to them. One woman said, they're a race which can't be trusted. Another man said he'd never consider doing a deal with Argentina because it's corrupt and it never does what it says it's going to. So I've come to one of Stanley's most popular pubs, the Victory Bar, to speak with its barwoman and find out whether what I've been hearing is a true representation of what the islanders think.
A few of the fellas come here from Argentina recently, and they've actually come here with t-shirts on saying Islas Malvinas and just showing it out to everybody, going around the pubs with them. And I don't think they should be here, personally.
So you wouldn't even want them coming as visitors? Because, for instance, I was up at the Argentine cemetery earlier and there was a small group of Argentines visiting. You would rather that doesn't happen?
I think we don't mind them coming and visiting their dead, but in moderation, not in a big crowd like there is at the moment. There's so many here, you don't know what they're doing. They can't be trusted, simple as that. We want to be British, we want to stay British, and it's up to the people, and Argentina should listen to it. We want to be British.